They sent me packing down in Green River Valley. I knew that if you couldn't.
Hey, this is Adam with Mile High Stash, the podcast that asks what 5 albums you would take to a remote Colorado cabin in the event of a zombie apocalypse. Today we've got one of my favorite people, the photographer George Lange. George is one of my favorite people because he's just so filled with joy and this ridiculous urge to connect with other people and know about them. George is most well known for his iconic photos in Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, and other magazines. Photos of actors and athletes and musicians from the cast of Seinfeld at the height of their fame to Dennis Rodman and our fellow Pittsburgher Andy Warhol and even Bob Marley. George has taken photos of, in his words, presidents, poets, and people I pull in off the street. Photos of strangers. George grew up in Pittsburgh, where I'm from, and we connected over that when our kids were going to the same elementary school in Boulder a long time ago now. And eventually, I was amazed to hear George's life story about his legendary friendship with the late Francesca Woodman, his time as an assistant for Annie Leibovitz, and then his long career, Picturing Joy, which is the name of his new book. You can go to georgelange.com to find out more about George, see his work, and to order Picturing Joy. But do that after listening to our conversation, which is up next, after some words from the amazing all-purpose Colorado catering company, Savory Cuisines.
Looking for a professional Boulder, Colorado catering company with an excellent reputation for service and food? Savory Cuisines Catering works to provide the very best catering services in the Boulder and Denver metro areas by consistently delivering superior service, extensive menus, and unforgettable events. They use only the freshest and most flavorful ingredients prepared and served by their experienced and professional staff, led by the one and only Bob Sargent. Your party, wedding, or corporate event will sparkle with Savory's wide array of appetizers, entrees, and desserts. With 20 years in business here in Boulder, with exceptional high-quality service, Savory is the ideal catering company for your next event. Head to savorycuisines.com for more info.
What's up, George?
Hey.
How are you, buddy?
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah.
You sound good.
Yeah, man.
So good to see you.
You too. You Yinzer.
It's a 412.
Yeah. You got an even nicer microphone than I got.
Ooh. Well, you know what happened? My son, Jackson, wanted to do podcasts at one point, and I got him this Rode Go thing that we've never really used.
Yeah, that's really nice.
But
that's killer. I'm taking my kid to see Beck at Red Rocks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Beck's amazing.
I'm really excited to talk to you about Picturing Joy. This is the first time you've done a book?
It's the second time I've done a book. I did one 10 years ago. It was called The Unforgettable Photograph.
Yeah.
And it did really well.
Okay.
The best part is Instagram bought 5,000 copies of it and then created this position of artists in residence with their in-house ad agency, which is called Creative Shop for me.
Yeah.
And I got to go all over the world for Instagram and had a lot of fun.
Fantastic. I mean, even the name of this book, I thought I wanted to ask you, has this been your career? Picturing Joy. That's your
Yes. Well, first of all, I have to show it to you, even though no one can see it. It just came today.
Oh, sweet.
Today I got my first copy, a single copy, which is here.
It's beautiful.
But it's a really good Pittsburgh story, and I love that you and I have Pittsburgh connections.
Yeah.
I was living in Boulder for 7 years, and then moved back to Pittsburgh after my mother passed away 4 years ago, and actually moved into the house that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And they always say you can't go home again, and I've always believed that home is where the heart is. And I come back to Pittsburgh and find out that this is my home. Yeah. And it manifests itself in so many incredible ways. But one of the most interesting is I put up pictures on a wall, which I never do in my studio. You can see it behind me. And I looked at the wall and I went, oh my gosh, there's this thread going through all the pictures that I never thought about. And when I came back to Pittsburgh, I reconnected with this feeling of joy that I had growing up, which is not happy all the time, but it's this love of connecting with people, connecting with you right now.
Yeah.
And it's trying to recreate that feeling has been what I've done my entire adult career. And I've done it, with presidents. I've done it with musicians. I've done it with poets. I've done it with the people on the street that I grab and bring into my studio. And I really feel that I do it with my relationships too, with my friendships, with my marriage, with my kids. And seeing that and understanding that, I started to write about it last fall. And it became this book, but I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait for a publisher. I wanted to get the book out. So I did the whole book in 4 months. It's a self-publishing hybrid.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun. The woman that I worked with on it said, when you write these stories, pretend that they're a tangled head of hair and brush it and brush it and brush it. And then look at it the next day and you'll see it's still a little tangled. You brush it some more. So the stories are very condensed, but they're really, they're from all throughout my career.
The stories are very vivid and fun. They're joyful. My favorite one is the picture of you. I love all the pictures of you with the beard and the long hair. But the photo of you with your dad at the Steelers game, like really into it.
Did you go to Steelers games when you were growing up?
We couldn't afford Steelers games. We went to Pirates games when it was Buck Night, and we would go for $1. I didn't go to a Steelers game until I was maybe 15. And then I went again when I was maybe in college at Pitt. And I wanted to ask you, how has Pittsburgh changed since you grew up? I mean, my sense was that it's suddenly cool when you go back. It's like, wow, this place is cool now.
Except when we were growing up, it was cool because that's all we knew.
Yeah, right.
So we would find pockets of cool. And I think wherever you go, you kind of find it. Coming back it's been opening myself up and appreciating great generosity. I mean, I feel like I have a lot to give back to the city now because I've had this wild career and I'm coming back here with a lot to share. And I also feel that I've met these incredible people that appreciate me, that are very supportive of me. And it's kind of a two-way thing. I can help them tell their story. And I'm involved in telling Pittsburgh's story now. And I also feel very alive. It's a very human city, but it's also hard to describe what it is. Like if someone says, oh, Pittsburgh sounds great, should I consider moving there? Well, I can't really recommend someone moves here because I'm coming here with so many connections.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, I'll tell you one thing about Pittsburgh is it's very affordable.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, even when you're talking about dollar pirate games, they have a thing for the Pirates now where you can pay, I think it's $25 or $30 a month and you get standing room at all the games. Well, since there are always plenty of seats, it's basically $30 a month to go to all the home games. So whether you are struggling or not, you can probably scrape that together and afford it. And
that would be the cost of like a parking spot at a Dodgers game. Not
even. I mean, I remember going to a football game down in Dallas and the parking was like $150 or something. It was so insane. Steeler games are expensive. And my dad had 6 tickets. He was not wealthy. Yeah. But for some reason he had tickets my whole life and they were nothing like they are now. Yeah. Yeah. So I gave those tickets away, unfortunately.
Oh no.
When I left Pittsburgh and now that my son's really into football, I'm regretting that just a teeny bit, but again, people are generous. Like people call, you need a ticket to this, you need, it's just accessible. There's no concert here that you can't get into. There's no sporting event that you can't find a way to, I mean, it's been funny even this summer. People have been so generous with me. A friend has a beach house that he could VRBO for thousands of dollars a week, but he doesn't want to do that. An old friend from Pittsburgh. Yeah. And every summer we get to go to the beach house for a week for free. Yeah. And that kind of generosity it feels like that's out of another era.
Yeah.
And even in New York, there's a client of mine who's a good friend now, and she said, I have an apartment in New York for July if you need to use it. Well, I said, you're talking to the wrong person unless you're serious about it. And I went to New York 4 times in the last month and just
that's awesome.
Fell in love with New York again. But I could do it by not having like insane expenses every time I went.
Yeah. Well, you meet Pittsburgh people all over the world too. And there's this connection, which is funny because a lot of the reason that you meet them all over the world is because they left, but then they still have this like civic pride that they have in places like Pittsburgh and Boston, that we don't quite experience in Colorado or California, really. It's really cool.
There's also this wild boomerang effect in Pittsburgh. Like there's so many people that left after high school, had this whole experience like I did. And 40 years later or 30, something like that, 40 years later, come back. And I never expected to move back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I mean, Pittsburgh was great, but I never thought that the opportunities would be here. And not only are the opportunities in Pittsburgh for me, but my whole career everywhere. I'm doing a ton of work in San Francisco now. And everything seems to be like, there's some very good, how they talk about the heat dome over Texas this summer?
Right.
It feels like there's a karma dome over Pittsburgh. And in this karma dome, so many good things have happened. And it's almost, you're pinching yourself going like, there's a life coach that I went to during COVID, a really wonderful woman named Bear Brandigy, and we met, and she wrote a lot of things down that we said at the very beginning. And we haven't been seeing each other so much in that like that recently, but I called her up the other day and I said, Bear, it's happening, and burst into tears. And it was incredible because all the things that we talked about, all the things that I wanted to happen when I first moved here, all the things that all my dreams, suddenly right now, this year has been one of the greatest years, not only of my career, but of my life.
That's fantastic.
And it's really just opening yourself up to generosity and also being generous, opening yourself up to people who trust you and want to trust you, and knowing that you need to be trustworthy. And then, as my book talks about, like opening yourself up to the joy. We look at the news every day and it's so horrifying. It's so terrible, like nonstop every story. And yet within our lives, there's all this joy. You're going to see Beck at Red Rocks tonight. I mean, what could be better than that?
It might be in my future to get inside the Karma Dome of Pittsburgh again. But I want to ask you about the past, and just quickly, if you can, like talk about something that you sent me an email about. You said you listened to my interview with Molly Tuttle and what I said about stuttering, and that, you grew up in Pittsburgh and then, ended up in this very fast, fantastic world of RISD and then New York City, but you had experience having a stutter. And then one of the charmed things that happened in your life was that you worked for Annie Leibovitz, and she's the kind of person who's like, oh, that stutter's not going to work for me.
That's exactly right. First of all, Annie stutters, which is kind of interesting too.
Yeah.
But when I grew up, and I had a bigger problem when I was reading. If I had to read in front of a microphone, if I had to do what we're doing now, if I had to get up in front of a class, I went to a journalism school for a little at the beginning of college, and we had to go on the radio. I could not do that. I mean, I would just be blank. When I moved to New York and I had to call people up, strangers, it was really, really hard. Half the time I would have to hang up. I couldn't get their name out. I couldn't get my name out. That was really hard. But then I started working for Annie, who was my hero growing up. And I was so excited, and it was such a big deal. And I would start making phone calls for her. I was the only assistant in the office. So it was insane. It was the last 6 months of Rolling Stone the first 6 months of Vanity Fair.
Okay.
And at some point I'm on the phone and I'm stuttering, not horribly, but enough so I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And she says, "You can't stutter if you work for me. Like, there's no room for stuttering here."
Wow.
And it's like, oh, that's how it's solved. I knew there was a trick. You got to go with your hero, and they tell you that you can't stutter, and then like some magic wand is being waved above your head. But whatever happened, I got to the point that I could communicate.
Yeah.
But when I left Annie, I specifically remember there was a magazine called Geo, and I was trying to call the picture editor, who was Elizabeth Biondi. And to get that out of my lips was absolutely impossible. And I would call them all the time and have to hang up.
Yeah.
And then I finally got through and got my first big assignment.
Yeah. Maybe all it took was someone saying, "You can't stutter anymore." And they said, okay. Yeah.
That, a little WD-40, you know, a little kick in the ass. Who knows? I mean, it is, I still have issues, but, and when I look at my lips, sometimes when I'm talking on a Zoom or something, I can see that my mouth is like playing around it, but people don't hold it against you. That's my hope.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. The things that I've learned is that it's important to not stop yourself from doing things that you want to do because you stutter, because then your stutter is not going to improve, because you're not going to get practice talking. And then also, anytime you go into a social situation, a work situation, trying to hide your stutter, you're going to stutter way worse.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
And it's not about going to therapy or going into your daily life trying to stop stuttering. It's about actually making peace with it. And then you get through your stutter and you find your ways, your mechanisms. And so a lot of people who stutter when they're kids or when they're adolescents really bad, still stutter. It's not like me at my age or you at your age. It's not that we have completely, quote unquote, cured our stuttering and not stuttered anymore. It's just that we know how to work with it.
Right.
You know?
And yet here we are. We're able to communicate, and it would be very sad if our stutter won the fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Adam, I have to stop right now because I'm looking over your shoulder at a picture of Pete Seeger.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And Pete Seeger was my hero growing up.
Yeah.
He was just such a huge part of my life, from going to see him at Carnegie Music Hall when I was really young, and people passing out, you know, sheets of paper, "Don't go in, he's a communist," to holding my son at a Clearwater festival, and we're right at Pete Seeger's feet. And it was just so incredible. But I got this assignment for Rolling Stone to photograph Pete Seeger. And I go up to his house on the Hudson. It's a late winter day. It's bright sun. It's beautiful. It's cold. And he's out there chopping wood when I get there. And he's in his 80s or something. Right. I don't know. He was an older guy in great shape.
He still had like 20 years to go at that point, too. You know?
and he says, "I got to get the sap boiling, then I can do the pictures with you."
Yeah.
So, I mean, the whole time I'm there, I'm just pinching myself. I can't believe it. And just to back up for 1 second, what I do for a living is I photograph strangers.
Right.
So I don't get in a place where I'm comfortable. I mean, I do get to a place that I'm comfortable, but it's not like we have a long relationship. It's like every day it's a new person.
Yeah.
So there I am with Pete Seeger, and he's chopping wood, and he's burning down getting the sap boiling, and all this white smoke's coming out, and the Hudson's back there. And I'm taking these pictures that I love so much. And I have to send you one because you would obviously love it too. And then he goes and gets his banjo, sits on a log. He says, "What do you want to hear?"
What did you say?
And this gets to an interesting part of our discussion about albums. I said, the song I want to hear is, It's on a very rare album. It's on an album called Pete Seeger Now. And it is, if music could only bring peace, I'd only be a musician.
Oh, yeah, I do know that one.
And it's so beautiful. And he was kind of shocked because everyone wants to hear Guantanamera or a zillion other things. And he played it for me.
Wow.
And in my career, when people say, who was your favorite person to photograph? What was your favorite shoot? I never really answer that question because they're all my children. And, you know, my stock answer is it's always the next shooting. And I really believe that. But that moment at that shooting was really, really special.
That takes us nicely into what, you know, can be the intermission of our conversation in a way. And I would like to know what 5 albums you would take to a remote Colorado cabin in the event of a zombie apocalypse.
Okay, so I made a list.
That's great.
And for every album I picked, I know I'm cheating here. There were 2 albums. So I picked for my soul album, I picked Songs in the Key of Life, which I just is so amazing. I think the song As is one of my absolute favorite songs of all time. And when I photographed Stevie Wonder, he sang that for me.
Wow.
And it was, again, one of those moments that you can't even believe exists. I'm going to tell you a super quick story, though.
Yeah.
He was doing Songs in the Key of Life, the entire album, several years ago in Denver. And I couldn't go. And I was just freaking out because I had to hear As live. And a couple days later, I was going to Dallas and he was there doing that concert. I get off the plane. It was for work. I think I was there. I run to the American Airlines Arena and it's all locked up. And I'm running around looking for an usher or an open door. It's locked up. The show's started. And I'm banging on the doors. Like I picture myself as Benjamin at the end of The Graduate. Banging on the doors. Elaine. But I'm like, I have to get in. Finally, all the doors open and it's intermission. And everyone comes flooding out. And I start going up to the ushers. I said, I need to get in. I only need to hear one song, but I have to do it. I'll pay you $100 if you'll just let me stand in the back and hear this one song. No one is letting me in. And finally, someone says, just stand here. He goes and gets the manager. The manager comes out and says, what the hell do you think you're doing? You know, you don't have a ticket. You aren't getting in. I said, listen, I just flew from Denver. I need to hear this one song live. I just have to hear it. And I make my case. And he goes, stand here and don't move. And I don't know if he's getting the police or what's going on. 10 minutes later, everyone's gone back in. He appears. And he goes, follow me. I still don't know if I'm going, where I'm going.
Yeah.
He takes me to the side of the stage, puts me in a seat and says, enjoy.
Oh, in a seat.
In a seat. That moment, the lights go down. He comes back on stage and that baby that is crying at the beginning of Isn't She Lovely is now 32 years old and she's on stage singing with him.
Wow.
And I got to hear the whole, last 2 sides of the album, which include As.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you need to write many books, George, not just these 2.
So the other album that I would balance with that I've just loved so much is John Baptiste We Are.
Yeah.
I just think that's just an extraordinary album that he made during COVID. And the more I listen to it and play it, the more I've loved it. And I listen to that a lot. For jazz albums, I think Monk's Riverside Recordings and Bill Evans' Riverside Box 2 are both, I could listen to those forever. And also with my jazz album, I photographed Quincy Jones and he told me that he listened to actually the same night as Stevie Wonder. It was for a Vibe cover. And I did this shot of Coolio too that night that Weird Al Yankovic then copied for his album cover. But Quincy Jones said that he listens to Kind of Blue every single morning of his life.
Wow.
And I did that for a while and I could keep doing that forever too.
Yeah.
That album's keeps on giving. At the Boulder Theater one winter night, I went to see this group called I don't even know how to pronounce it, the Tori Raquel Collective. It's a pianist from Israel, and it's a blues guitarist from Mali, whose father, Ali Farkator, was a very famous blues guitarist. And this guy is named Vu Farkator. They have an album called The Paris Sessions.
And this is on your 5.
This is on my 5.
You really liked it then.
I love it. And there's a song on there called Hodu that I think is really just magical.
We'll put that on the playlist because we have a Spotify playlist where we put at least one song from each album. Yeah, so people can check that out.
So for my rap category, I have 2. I love Chance the Rapper's Coloring Book. I think
cool.
That's just an extraordinary album. And we listen to that at our house all the time. And in my studio, I spent last summer listening to No Name's Telephone. And
I don't know that one. I got to check that out.
Every song is like 2 minutes long. The whole album's like 28 minutes. And I listened to that 500 times and I just can't get enough of it. She also has, that album's like 3 or 4 years old, but she has a song that she released 2 years ago called Rainforest. And I listened to that 500 times this summer. I'm not even quite sure what it means. I keep trying to understand it, but I just love this song. It's that you should definitely consider. It's fantastic. But she just came out with a new album last week, and the lyrics are on one song are extremely troubling, and people are rejecting the album because of this one song. And I just haven't listened to it enough for kind of come to my own thing, but I think she's an extraordinary talent. I'm going to throw one other album in here, which is what I listened to my whole childhood growing up. And it's so random, but my parents loved Bobby Short, and they loved New York cabaret music. And he was kind of the king of that. And he has an album called Bobby Short Loves Cole Porter.
It sounds like music has just always been a big thing in your life, even with your family growing up.
Huge. I mean, music is the sound. There's a soundtrack to my life. I've never done a photo shoot without music playing. And, back in the day, I would take 500 CDs to a shooting, and I would spend much more energy on the music because the rhythm of the shoot was so important to me, much more important than the lighting or the clothes or the hair and makeup. The music. And, my whole thing when I photograph, it's not about what things look like, it's what they feel like.
Right.
And that's music was just a huge part of that.
What music was playing when you photographed the cast of Seinfeld?
I don't remember. I mean, I would put together mixes that back in that time, I used to play Joe Jackson's that album that he did of oh my gosh, I'm spacing. Jump and Jive. I played that a lot. I would play a lot of Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and that kind of stuff at shoots.
Oh, cool.
But then I also I love John Laurie. Have you watched Painting with John?
No.
It's on HBO. It's my favorite show by far. It's these 20-minute episodes. And the music is John Laurie. A lot of it's Marvin Pontiac stuff, which was this kind of character that he created, this blues character, but also voice of Chunk and all that stuff. And his painting's great, and his stories are insane. I can't recommend John Laurie enough. I love Beirut. I saw them at Brooklyn Academy of Music, and I thought the roof was going to blow off the place. I mean, that album, The Flying Club Cup, and that song Nantes. I just love. There's an album that Lucinda Williams and Charles Lloyd did called Dust. And when my mother was sick, someone gave me an apartment, and I'd go there every morning to write, and I listened to that album on a loop. That album is, and the reason I didn't include it in my top 5 is I was trying to decide if I'm up on this mountain and there's zombies everywhere that I'm avoiding, am I if I listen to music that's too sad, that would be that would be hard.
Some people feel comfort in sad music, like as sad as possible, and we just lay in it like a comfortable bed. Sometimes
Right.
I feel that way.
Right. Well, I think Dust, I mean, when my mom was sick, that really did it for me. That was really helpful. And then, I mean, the other two people, I mean, there's so many people, but like Tom Waits, I listen to all the time. I think Blood Money, which was a soundtrack that he did for Robert Wilson performance, is.
Did you photograph him?
No.
It's pretty hard for anyone to get any access to Tom Waits whatsoever.
Which is fun. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Sometimes your heroes, and I've photographed a lot of my heroes, but there are a lot of people that I actually don't want to meet.
I remember you saying that. Yeah, because if there was anything that you didn't like about them, it would ruin your enjoyment of their art.
Yeah, and most people aren't who they pretend to be. I mean, I think Tom Waits is the real deal. I think the people that have photographed him have done insanely great photographs. And there are certain people I almost don't feel like I need to photograph because other people have like captured it.
Yeah.
The same with Patti Smith. You know, I love Patti Smith. Horses is one of those 5 favorite albums, I guess, if we're going to 10. But I think that she's had an incredible career. And and the other thing I love with musicians is when they evolve. Ella Fitzgerald, you know, had this whole career of big band and all these things that she did. And then at the end of her career, she did the most intimate, perfect duets with Joe Pass and Oscar Peterson. And those are on a level that you can't reach when you're younger. Right. And I love when musicians can let go of all the things that made them famous, How High the Moon and all this stuff, and can get to this incredibly sophisticated or this place that you get to through experience.
Yeah. I mean, when Tom Waits was doing his whole lounge singer thing, I mean, there was no sense that he would ever do something like Alice, like something which is really sophisticated and deep, you know. Did you ever photograph Paul Rubens?
No.
Yeah, that's somebody I've been thinking about a lot lately, because when I was a kid, Pee Wee Herman was, the Playhouse was just the most surreal, magical thing. And then when I had a kid, I bought the box set like the day it came out so we could watch every episode together. It was like if Howdy Doody was directed by John Waters. It's like how I see it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Paul Rubens is another guy. Like, that was such an invention that if you photographed him, you were photographing for years the invention. And I've listened to a bunch of interviews with him recently, and he's a little scary to me. And I think that he was scary in the show too. Brilliant. And the work he did was amazing. But someone told me about Tom Waits, a friend of mine from Pittsburgh. Yeah. When Tom Waits was playing at the Beacon, I said, I'm going to go see him. He goes, get a balcony seat. It's scary getting too close to him. and I feel that way maybe about Paul Rubens too. Yeah. By the way, since you know, this is based on music, the Rick Rubens book, what is it? The Creative Way?
Oh yeah. I haven't read it yet.
It's really good. It's really wonderful to listen to because he does a thing with the gong and his voice is very beautiful. But this idea that we're all creative and things we do, and I have a lot of friends, so I'm not as creative as you and this and that. It's like, well, what'd you make for breakfast? Oh, I got these like 5 ingredients. I had never put it together this way, but I like put it together. I put pesto in the pan, and then I put arugula on top of it, and then I broke an egg on top of that and put a tomato on top of that. And it's like, that's what I'm talking about. You know,
you're a painter. Yeah.
And I think that he's done a really amazing job of taking a career in music and really being smart about it and letting it evolve into something else, where he's having discussions now and talking about ideas that are the evolution of a life and a career, more than just, you know, I found one thing that I do well and I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. I would like to see Brian Eno also have a podcast where, you know, he would talk about, you know, he's very different, but he's the kind of person who says, I'm not a musician. I'm just, somebody who, I don't even know what he would say, somebody who understands music on a level that can help other people transform their careers. Like if Bowie or Talking Heads or U2 had never worked with Brian Eno, they might have only stayed in one lane that they were in.
Right. I mean, another person who I really love is Keith Jarrett. And I think about him a lot because he would go to Carnegie Hall and take his mind like it was an Etch-a-Sketch and turn it upside down and shake it, and then walk out on stage completely blank as he could get himself, and start playing. And wherever the music took him, it was not from a map. He would not play from a GPS.
Yeah.
He was like trying to find where it would go. And he created this thing where the audience would go with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was, I like to think, like, I do no research when I photograph people. I did a lot of the ads for the Seinfeld show. I hadn't seen a Seinfeld episode till like a couple months ago. I was going by it and it was on and we watched it. And I said, "Oh, Steffi, this is my wife. This is really funny." And she goes, "Of course it's funny. Like, what did you think?" But I did Jim Carrey's movie posters. I'd never seen a Jim Carrey movie. I was never interested in photographing the person's celebrity. I was interested in photographing who they were as people. And I think that artists that can get to that place, Keith Jarrett, like almost every jazz musician. I think Tom Waits goes there. I mean, you go to these places where they create an experience that's so alive, but it also feels so like an adventure that you can't go on by yourself, but you're in an audience and you're all going on this adventure, both together and having individual experiences.
That's how I feel about Pee Wee's Playhouse, right?
Yeah,
right
yeah. I'll tell you another concert at Carnegie Hall. I saw one of the last concerts of Gilles Gilberto.
Oh, wow.
And he was he really invented bossa nova, one of the first people to do it. And he's an older man. He comes up on stage and he starts to play and he goes, "I can't do this. I can't hear." And he won't play. And it goes on for like a half hour and the audience is getting very restless. People are trying to come up and help him. And finally someone comes up and it's like they turned the key or something and he gave this concert. I have one other really good story. All these stories are coming to me. I went to the Hollywood Bowl, the last 3 concerts that Nina Simone did. She did Carnegie Hall and got this insane review. And then I think she did San Francisco. And then she came to, not the Hollywood Bowl, it was
the Greek Theater?
The Greek Theater. And I'm sitting right up front. And she comes on stage and she's waving this feather. It was like a peacock feather. And she's waving it. And people are yelling out songs for her to play. And she goes, "Get the record, get the record." And then she sits down at the piano and an elderly gentleman, Black gentleman, very dignified, beautiful posture, comes out and he stands right in the middle of the stage. And she goes, "Do you know who this man is?" And no one knows. "Do you know who this man is?" She keeps repeating it. She says, "This man got on a plane today for the first time in his life to come hear his sister sing."
Wow.
And that's music to me. She didn't have to even sing. That was the music. Like, you go for these experiences that are so powerful. And the music gets you there and is part of it and is maybe the reason you're there. But it's like having this group experience that's just so powerful. And, it's what my book is about. It's what my career is about. And I've really tried to create these experiences where myself and another person can have this interaction where we go to this place that we can't get to on our own. We need each other.
Yeah. And, so much of being a important, successful photographer is what you're saying about you're opening yourself up to magic, and you're not just taking a picture of the person, you're creating this whole feeling in the room. And then it sounds like what you're taking a photo of is the feeling.
Totally. And I'm not even that interested in photography. I never printed my work till like 5 years ago. And now I'm making some prints, and that's interesting and fun. But I consider the experience the thing, and the photographs are an artifact of the experience. And because I've been photographing a good, a long time, I am able to take good artifacts of the experience, and the photographs are good. And that's a thing that I do, but that's not the main thing I do. The main thing I do is to create these experiences. And I'm even doing this team building now in corporate settings. And I'm finding it like so interesting, because the same thing exists there, especially after the pandemic. People are needing the emotional connection that they had with their company. They're still doing their Zooms. They're still working hard. They're still checking off the boxes, but the emotional connection to the people they work with isn't there because they aren't together.
Yeah.
So I'm creating these experiences. I give a talk, and then I do this photo session that's very physical, and people are allowed to express themselves and encouraged to, and want to express parts of themselves that they can't do in a Zoom.
Yeah.
And it's really been super successful. I just did one with the League of American Orchestras who were in Pittsburgh. It's orchestras from all over the country. I'm the photographer for the Pittsburgh Symphony now.
That's fantastic, George. Wow.
And that the first shooting, Adam, first shooting, the first person I shot is the youngest person in the orchestra. He's 22 years old. He's a violist just out of Juilliard. His name is Sean Jewell. And he comes to the set, and he's like, oh, this is going to be boring. I have to have my picture taken. I'll just play the instrument for a minute and get it over with. And he gets on my set. And the first shooting of a big project's a really big deal to me. You have to set the bar high, and something great has to happen. So he gets in front of my camera, and I go, stab my lens. He goes, what? I go, stab my lens. He goes, I can't do that. I said, why not? He says, I have an expensive bow. You have an expensive lens. I can't stab your lens. I go, stab my lens. And I got very excited about it. And he does it. And it's this incredibly dynamic picture that became the signature picture for the symphony. It's it's all over town. And it's from this moment that I didn't have planned. I didn't have any idea until he was standing there. And, it's the same with being a good dad. Being a good dad is not having the night plan, not having the conversation necessarily written out or all the questions. It's like going there and feeling it all out, saying things that you never had thought before, listening to your daughter or your son, and where their head's going, giving them some quiet, getting excited about things that you can get excited about. And it's all just like that. It's all one. It's not like work and your personal life and all this. It's all just, looking at life and appreciating how many amazing things are happening everywhere you go, every day, in the cab, in the Uber, walking through the airport. Steffi and I just spent 4 days in New York. We had zero planned, nothing planned. And we came back with so many experiences. We woke up in the middle of the night. Someone lent us this apartment on the 23rd floor of this building, and there's a lightning storm, and we're facing north. All of Manhattan is there. And it's just like doing this strobe light, just like I'm in a studio taking someone's picture, but it's the whole city of Manhattan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, something I say all the time is just, it's ridiculous to be alive. Just the fact that we get to be alive is ridiculous, and so I'm appreciating every moment and being open to, speaking of being open to magic. I'm just about to leave to take my kid to see Beck at Red Rocks. And one of the things that I remember of Red Rocks that was magic was taking my kid to see Stevie Wonder there.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 4 years ago. And at one point he brought out Usher, and Usher danced on Stevie Wonder's piano. And that was just, these unexpected things that aren't planned. It's not the reason that you are somewhere, but then the spontaneous thing that happens becomes the thing that you remember.
Right. The last time I was at Red Rocks, Mac Miller grew up in Pittsburgh, and I was friends with his mom, Karen. And
Squirrel Hill, I believe.
Yes, over near Frick Museum.
Yeah.
And I photographed him a bunch, but he was at Red Rocks and I was backstage with him and Wiz Khalifa was actually, I think, the headliner. They were doing it together. And how magical that was, both for the audience and for him. Like playing Red Rocks was a really big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're somebody who, I could fill 100 hours of podcast time with. So maybe, next year when I'm in Pittsburgh again, I'll come by your studio and we'll do another episode and just talk. I want to ask you a question about Andy Warhol. So maybe that can be the end of our conversation and we'll put it on a cliffhanger. The next time we talk, I'll ask you the question I want to ask about Andy Warhol.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks so much. It's so good to see you. And I just want to say one other thing. When I was in Boulder, you wrote 1 or 2 articles on what I do. And those are really, that was really a big deal. And that you got it. And man, you're such a good writer. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm looking for it because I know it's in my iCloud or something, but there's a photo of me and you. It was so special to me to interview you about Francesca Woodman and about how, you were in her loft after she died and all of the photos were everywhere, so to be at MCA in that exhibit that was made to be the loft and to stand there with you was
it was not made to be the loft. It was the loft. Yeah. They took a couple photographs of mine and recreated her loft and it was 2 stories high. And it was breathtaking. It was so breathtaking.
Great.
Just for if someone's made it to the end of this, there's a book of that show called Portrait of a Reputation that has the pictures that I took of Francesca and Francesca's pictures that Rizzoli put out.
Yeah.
With that show. There's also a really good interview on Dazed Digital on Francesca and myself. And my book comes out. I'm going to plug it. It's in pre-sale now. It's called Picturing Joy. And it is being published November 6th, but you can get it now. And I'd love to get feedback from anyone that is enjoying it or not.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Have fun tonight.
Yeah.
I'll give you another hour, then I gotta run, I gotta fly away, leave you to fall.
That was George Lange and me talking about his new book, Picturing Joy, and his love of music, and a lot more. Thanks again for listening, and to Savory Cuisines for their support. Make sure to check out George Lange's amazing photos at georgelange.com, and also I go there to order his book. All right, we'll see you right here again next Monday for another episode of Mile High Stash. The Beck Show was really great, and I had a great time with my kid there. It's funny when you go to see music that meant a lot to you when you were the same age that your kid is now. And sometimes I write show reviews for liveforlivemusic.com, and my Beck review is up there if you want to check it out. I also have my own website where it's not a blog, it's just where I collect articles that I write for the weekly newspaper in Boulder, and then Westward in Denver, and cycling magazines, and liveforlivemusic.com. And that website is Adam Perry Writes at wordpress.com. All right, we'll talk soon.
Don't share your passion for ever-changing eternal twilight. Go on and give oblivion a shot. You go on and fade to gray. You got to. Maybe you'll do better without God, and maybe I'll do better without you. Well, I wish I were true, and I wish I were you, sitting across from me, instead of this impersonation of